Welcome to Changing Voices in Higher Education, the podcast that explores the dynamic shifts shaping campuses and learners around the world. I am your host, Shamima Raihan Manzoor, a higher education researcher and educator passionate about understanding how institutions adapt, innovate, and thrive in this rapidly evolving landscape. Today's episode is titled Innovation and Empowerment in Higher Education. As higher education continues to undergo profound transformation, leaders are rethinking how institutions serve not only traditional students but also adult learners, newcomers, and entrepreneurs. From skills based training and workforce alignment to equity, accessibility, and innovation, the sector is moving toward models that prioritize opportunity, empowerment, and community impact. This season, we are highlighting the visionaries who are not just responding to these changes, but actively leading them, creating pathways for learners to thrive in education, careers, and life. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome today's guest, Marija Pavkovic Tovissi, an accomplished entrepreneur, educator, and community advocate with more than 20 years of leadership experience across business, education, and the nonprofit sector. She's the founder and president of MaKami College, established in 2001, where she has championed strategic growth, innovation, and student focused initiatives that have positioned the college as a leader in Alberta's post secondary landscape. Under her leadership, McCamey College made history by transitioning from a for profit private vocational college to a non profit publicly funded independent academic institution, an extraordinary shift in Canada's higher education story. Beyond McCamey, Maria co founded WB Consulting Incorporation, dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs, and leads the McCamey College Education Foundation, which has provided significant funding to newcomers and the students through bursaries, ESL programs, and educational supports. Her work reflects not only a passion for education, but also a deep commitment to mentorship, philanthropy, and community development. She's widely recognized for her ability to create opportunities, foster partnerships, and inspire others to reach their goals. And I could not think of a more inspiring voice to help us explore today's theme of innovation and empowerment in higher education. Thank you, Maria. It's been wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start at the very beginning. You founded McCamey College back in 2001. What inspired you to start an institution focused on adult education, and how has that vision evolved over the last 2 decades?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. My family is based out of former Yugoslavia originally, and we came to Canada as immigrants. We came to Edmonton first, and I've since moved to Calgary. And one of the things that I noticed is my mom always had this passion for education, this passion for lifelong learning, but we came not speaking the language. And they were working in jobs and careers that were not conducive to what they were back in former Yugoslavia. My mom was working as a janitor for the University of Alberta, and my dad was working on kind of the oil rigs. And they were in very low level jobs with not a lot of opportunity. And it's because they didn't speak the language well and they were really struggling. And so they both kind of decided to pursue education because they realized when you step onto the soil of Canada, you have to prove you are who you say you are, at least in regards to education and experience. And that requires upgrading and that requires getting Canadian education and levels here that are higher than what you've had back home. And so, as they were doing that, being that I was younger, I learned English a lot quicker because I was more immersed in it at school. I had friends who spoke English. And so, you pick up English a lot quicker than your parents do. And I had to go and translate on behalf of my parents as they were looking to pursue higher levels of education. And I honestly just didn't like how they were being treated. So there was a lot of conversations when my mom eventually became a nurse And she went on to become a holistic practitioner, an adult educator, and she just got like 50 different degrees and designations, and actually did her degree at U of A afterwards and her master's in education. And when she was doing all that, I had to speak on her behalf with post-secondaries. And they would always say things like, look to your left and look to your right. Half of you won't be here by the time graduation comes around. And they seemed kind of like proud of that fact, that they were going to weed you out, that they were going to make it more difficult for you. And that always kind of just pissed me off, to be honest with you, for lack of a better term, because I saw how hard my parents were working. I saw how hard they were taking English classes at night, working 2 jobs, trying to get re-educated, trying to put food on the table for their family. And I thought education is supposed to be this bridge, this pathway into being able to support yourself and your family. Why wouldn't we want to help people rather than harm them and make them worse off than how we found them? And so I just didn't understand the concept. It didn't make sense to me. And so it was actually at a point in time when I was in my early 20s, I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. I think that's every entrepreneur's story. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way. And I just got really passionate about it. And my mom, by that time, she had not only gotten out of her cleaning job at U of A, she'd actually become a nurse and an adult practitioner and a holistic doctor and an adult educator. And she was an educator for the Good Samaritan Society in Edmonton for nursing. And I just said to her, like, what if we started a small college and something simple like massage therapy? We could help a lot of immigrants. We could help a lot of newcomers really find their career path. I thought it was interesting how when she was a nurse, she was working shift work. And that was a great upgrade, obviously, from where she started. But she was working for not a lot of money at the time. This is some 30 years ago. And she was working a lot of shift work, and she still wasn't seeing us a lot, even though she loved her job. And then she started doing massage, typical immigrant lady. She's like, let me have a side job to my full-time job.
Yeah.
So she started doing massage therapy as like a way to earn some additional income. And she started making 3 times the amount as a massage therapist than she was making as a nurse, and she was setting her own hours. So we actually started with massage therapy as our anchor program because I just saw the potential. You know, there's that analogy of blue ocean and a red ocean. So of course there was way bigger sharks swimming around in a red ocean of post-secondary, but there wasn't a lot of people offering a proper massage therapy program at the time that was very medical based, that was very hands-on learning. And I saw such an opportunity for that program specifically for immigrants and newcomers, because you didn't have to speak perfect English. You just need to have good customer service and good skill sets and understanding of how to be able to do this. And you could do it from home. You could do it mobile. You can do it in place of business and set your own hours. I saw that as really potentially valuable.
As president and CEO, you have led the college through remarkable growth and transformation. Along the way, what have been some of the biggest leadership lessons you have learned?
I think somebody once told me, and this could be from John C. Maxwell, I'm not sure if I'm quoting the right person, but somebody said to me once, leadership is not about being in charge, it's about stewarding the people in your charge. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned, it's not about you or your position or your title, it's about how you serve your people, how you serve your staff, your employees, your extended family within your organization, because those are the people that are serving your clients. And so if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your clients. And I would say that's the most important lesson I think any leader should learn.
You wear so many hats, leading MaKami, co-founding WB Consulting, and heading the MaKami College Education Foundation. How do you balance these multiple leadership roles while staying true to your mission?
I actually hate the word balance because to me, when I think of balance, I imagine a circus act with a tightrope and like an elephant juggling. It's just not possible. You can achieve it for moments and then everything falls apart, right? And it's not realistic. And I think telling women to achieve balance in any of these formats is almost harmful, right? I think what I prefer is the word or term harmony. It's finding how to do things in harmony with each other so they're not competing for your time or your attention. And so for me, it's all about what can I do that complements each other. So for the foundation just makes a lot of sense. You know, I was always passionate about helping find pathways for people. And one of the biggest obstacles is financial when it comes to going into post-secondary. And so my family and I originally started a foundation to help people who couldn't afford education to fundraise scholarships and bursaries and that type of thing. And that's very in alignment with my current job. And then in regards to women in business, I just saw such a need for female leaders to step up and act as mentors. Because when I was up and coming in my entrepreneurial story, I didn't have a lot of female mentors. My mom was probably the only one that super inspired me me. But most of my mentors were actually men. And as you know, they do business very differently. And so I wanted to forge a path to help other women pursue their entrepreneurial dreams. So this is really more of a side thing that I get to do for fun on weekends, and different events that I get to speak at, and speakers that we get to bring in for ladies who are just looking for some information and background. So I make sure that the interests that I'm involved in are not competing with each other, that they're in harmony with each other. And I think that's the only way that I get that done. And then I have a fantastic team. I have hundreds of employees that execute on my vision all day long. And so nobody is an island. Nobody does this by themselves. And I think that if I didn't have the fantastic that I have now, I just don't think any of it would be possible.
Absolutely. I believe that whatever we achieve in life, especially within an organization, comes down to teamwork. Having that sense of cohesion and unity within the team is truly the key to any kind of success. Adult learners are such a growing demographic in Canada. From your perspective, what unique challenges and opportunities exist in serving this group compared to traditional post secondary students?
They're definitely growing in demographic, and I think each student comes with its own unique set of circumstances, and so many of them, so many barriers to entry. You think about finding childcare, you think about making sure that you have some sort of part-time job or income to support your endeavors. You think about talking to your spouse and convincing them that this might be a good opportunity for your family to invest in. Housing, some people are coming to us from domestic violence situations that they're escaping. Other people are coming from a history of abuse or addictions. You have the Indigenous community that are struggling with their own needs and identity. You have individuals that are coming as immigrants and newcomers where language is a barrier. So our country is beautiful because it's diverse, but it comes with its unique set of challenges when you're dealing with an adult student population. And I think what makes MaKami different and unique is we've recognized that. And instead of trying to fit everyone into one box, we've said, let's create wraparound services. Let's give them free ESL lessons. Let's work with students with disability needs and create accessibility strategies for them to be successful. Let's put free counseling and psychologists to work with students coming out of domestic violence situations. Let's ensure that we have housing connections in the community. Let's, in Edmonton, we actually have an on-site daycare to help with students who are looking for childcare. And so we are all about removing barriers to entry and then removing barriers to success. So if you do all of that well, and the person is able to enter, they still have from the first day to the last day of everything that's going to come up in challenges that would prevent them from being successful. The fears of not being good enough, the personal challenges of being a mother, a wife, a spouse, financial concerns, things that come up in their day-to-day lives. And so everything is competing for their time and attention, and they struggle through that and overcoming that. And so we're all about removing barriers and building bridges for them to create the life that they want. And so MaKami has a unique set of wraparound services, and that's how we've managed that, because we do see it as an opportunity to help people. I don't think it's as prevalent in other post-secondaries as it is with us. I think that's part of the reason why we were able to move to a publicly funded institutions and not the private sector, because the good work that we do to specifically target individuals that need the most amount of help and support, and then allowing them to have a footstool or a stepping stone into other levels of higher education, because it's not just about getting a job. We want to allow them to pursue other levels of higher education, and they might not qualify for a currently university because they have these challenges and things that they need to overcome. But once they've completed one of our courses or programs, they're able to step into other pathways, and that opens up more doors for them.
I think that's the real beauty of working with adult learners, seeing how they overcome challenges and grow through the process. Watching them succeed after completing the program is truly wonderful. One of the things MaKami is known for is its adaptability. How has the college evolved its programs to respond to labor market shifts and the growing demand for skills based education?
I think we've always prioritized labor market outcomes. I think some people work towards that outcome. We start with the outcome and work backwards, and that makes a big difference. We have incredible partnerships with employers. We've invested heavily in creating those partnerships. We have actual employers come to campus twice a year to showcase their business, to try to sell to the students why they should work for them. We kind of flip that around on its head. Instead of the students begging for work, we're sending employers to beg them to come to work with them. And I think we've done a really good job of placing MaKami alumni and graduates in the workforce in a way that is represented well, that employers are valuing their education and training, that they're preferring it to other institutes at time. And I think those relationships and partnerships play a big part of it. And I think understanding that it's not just about educating the individual, but preparing their future and their career is the most important thing. And so how we teach, how we deliver the program, all has to fit towards that outcome. And I think our team does that extremely well.
That ties into a bigger question about the higher education ecosystem. In your view, what role should private colleges play in complementing Canada's public higher education system?
I think MaKami has a unique perspective on this because we started in the private sector as a private vocational college, and now we've since moved into the public sector. And there's two types of private institutions or colleges, I would say. There's the one type that I think is really serving a community need and continues to serve a community need. It needs to be there. They're helping students with stepping stones into employment, stepping stones into higher education, giving opportunities to individuals who might not otherwise qualify for traditional post-secondary. And I think there's an absolute need for that. And I'm grateful that there's great institutions such as that working every day to help individuals. But I think there's a dark side to private sector as well, and we call them predatory institutions. And these individuals that are preying on immigrants, on newcomers, on people who don't speak perfect English, who are maybe a little naive to how the post-secondary system works, where they're really just diploma mills and they're trying to get people in to get their tuition dollars to profit off individuals that are in the most vulnerable position where they're just looking to improve their lives. And so I think that for the good players, there's definitely a spot to continue to help people with building pathways, finding employment, finding different levels of higher education. But I think there needs to be stricter screening, quicker action for the bad players that kind of give the entire private industry a bad name. We've all seen the news stories and stuff where people are kind of taking advantage, even the international student situation. Obviously, some people were using international students as a bit of a cash cow, and that kind of stuff just should not be happening. And so I think private institutions definitely have a role to play, but I think that we need to find a way to separate the good players from the bad players. And I've seen some things done in British Columbia that's a little different from Alberta, where the private sector in British Columbia actually has a tier system. So if you've been around for a really long time, if you've had good results for graduation and success rates for job placement, if you don't have any complaints, you're kind of at a tier one. If you're fairly new and unproven, you might be a lower tier. If you're somebody who's done some things where students have complained, you're a lower tier. And you can actually scale up or scale down based on your actions and your outcomes. And I think something like that would be wise to implement across Canada, but obviously that's not something I have control of. I've got lots of opinions, but no authority.
You have also placed strong emphasis on students' employability and industry connections. What strategies have proven most effective in preparing your graduates for real-world success?
I believe our hands-on training model, which is applicable across all of our programs, is really get the students hands-on training experience. And I think that is really employable. I think the other factor is building really strong relationships with employers and knowing what they want and what industry wants. And industries are constantly evolving and changing. So being in touch. So we have employer touch bases, we have luncheons, we have lunch and learns where we bring employers down to our campus, we talk to them, we see what's working, what's not, what's changing in the industry. We want to create a program that evolves as industry evolves. We don't want to be lagging and kind of behind the times of what industry is looking for and needing. And now with all these different things like AI and stuff, that's changing so much faster than it ever has been in the past. And so I think it's really important to keep a touch base with industry and have really good relationships so you understand what is employable and what's not.
Could you share a success story of a MaKami graduate, someone whose journey really reflects the college's mission to transform lives through education?
Wow, we have so many. We have so many. And honestly, if you go on our website or our Facebook page, you'll see lots of testimonials. We actually videotape a lot of our testimonials from our students so that people can see themselves in their story and realize that nothing is impossible. The one story that sticks out to me was actually for a couple of Edmonton students. It was an Indigenous mother and daughter that took the program together. So the mother was part of the scoop scenario, and the daughter was dealing with the consequences of that. And their lives have been incredibly difficult up to the point where they started kind of looking at improving it through education and work. And they struggled a lot. There was addictions in their past background. There was sexual abuse and assault in their past background. There was a lot of disappointment and loss and hardship. And they found our college through a friend that took the program, and they decided to take it, and they decided to take it together because their concept or idea was that maybe they'll start their own small business together. And throughout their process, they really supported each other. They worked really hard at overcoming a lot of things. There was quite a few times where I think both of them considered quitting because all the old fears, all the people telling them you can't do this and you're not that smart, from all the way from K to 12 education to potential ex-partners and things that had tried to discourage them. They were trying to overcome all of that. And it was quite incredible with this help and support and counseling that we provided on site. They were able to graduate from the program successfully. And initially, that was just enough. That was a huge win for them. And then they started kind of a small mobile business. And they kind of expanded that mobile business into hotels that didn't have spas and different services. And then they started coming back to our employment career fairs and hiring more graduates. And I think the last I heard, they were employing 27 massage therapy graduates, and they had grown their business significantly. And years ago, they actually ended up selling the company for a huge win, millions of dollars, and were extremely successful, and their lives have completely changed. And now they've turned more into advocacy, where they're helping other individuals and other people and doing things to promote health and education in their own community. And it's just such an incredible success story because you had years of government, social services, neglect and need that was generational to a degree, that both of them decided to break those generational curses, and they used education to free themselves from all of that, to overcome all of that, to create something incredible, not only for themselves but for their community.
Measuring long-term impact is something every institution wrestles with. How do you assess the effect of your program on students' careers and their communities over time?
I think for my brother and I, as we kind of really grew this college, the biggest thing that weighed on our mind was legacy. That was always our end result, was legacy. How can you build something that outlasts you, that outlasts your lifetime? How can you build something that will have an impact today, but will have a legacy for years or hundreds of years to come? And when I think of all of our students and the fact that we're helping them to chase their educational dreams, to pursue their higher education kind of pursuits, to support their families financially, to grow businesses, to scale, to do all these incredible things, the one thing that I notice with all of them is they have this capitalism with a heart mentality, where even as they start to see themselves get out of poverty and start to support themselves, they have this desire to want to help others. And the better off that they are in their lives, the more they seem to be community minded, community involved, going back to their individual kind of communities and supporting people that used to be like them, in helping them build a bridge to where they want to go. And I think that just multiplies exponentially. And I think that we're so privileged to be a part of that, and to know that over the years, we've helped tens of thousands of students, and we continue to do that. And that's 25-year history now going on this year. And we plan to be around for hundreds of years from now. So if you take that student graduation number and you multiply what they do for their spouses, for their children, for their communities exponentially, I mean, the legacy and impact is so significant that it really is a very purpose-driven career with us.
Beyond MaKami, through WB Consulting, you support women entrepreneurs. What unique challenges do women face in building businesses, and how can education play a role in overcoming them?
I think this is a very good question, and it's one I think a lot of women struggle with. I'm part of YPO Young Presidents Organization, and in Alberta, our chapter is mostly men. We do have great female leaders, but we've got quite a few male leaders, and that's because there's a certain level that you have to achieve by a certain age to get into YPO. And the one thing that I've noticed is, for women, it's obviously harder. For some of my male counterparts, they could really pursue their entrepreneurial journey with full force because they had a supportive spouse at home that was taking care of making the school lunches and doing the drop-offs and ensuring the basketball games are attended and that the cookie bake sale has been done. And I think for women, we have to play both of those roles. We have to be the entrepreneur and the mom and the wife and the community person and the daughter to our aging parents. And I think that the responsibilities for us is so significantly more spread out in different hats that we wear. It's hard to be focused just on one thing. And that's a challenge in itself. And then I think in general, women tend to treat businesses as babies. So they say, this is my baby and I want to take care of it. And I want to look good to the outside world that I'm doing something positive. And the reality is nobody gets to a significant level in business without a lot of external help and support and relationship building. And so men treat business very differently. They treat it as separate from them. And they will go and talk to their competitor and play a game of golf and kind of talk shop and solve each other's problems, even if they're in direct competition with each other. They're not afraid to separate the business from themselves and to share ideas. Whereas women are a little bit, tend to be, in my experience, more insecure about it. You know, we have that analogy of the Facebook reel. Everyone posts all the positive things in your life and nobody's sharing what's negative. And so as women, we're more attracted to social media and those things. We're more susceptible to that influence of your life has to be perfect, your family has to be perfect, your business has to be perfect. And so they're scared to be vulnerable to say, well, it's not, and I need help. And they're less likely to ask for help. And so that can really be a challenge to them establishing a business. That can extremely be a challenge for them in getting growth out of their business. And it's a huge marker for women in business. There's data that says there's only so many of them that make it to the 1 million mark. There's even way less of a percentage that make it to the $10 million mark compared to our male counterparts. And the number one reason for that, in my opinion, is this lack of being able to just be vulnerable and share what's going on and get the help and support that they need in real time in order to grow their business. And I think getting a proper mentor is also really key. I think there's plenty of great men that are mentors. I think we have a harder time finding successful female mentors that can help other women kind of grow, which is why we started Women in Business. We were trying to connect those dots for individuals that didn't have those resources or relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Having a good mentor can really help someone build the habit of maintaining balance and harmony no matter what challenges come their way. It creates a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction at the end of the day, especially for women striving to juggle so many roles. For women who are just beginning their entrepreneurial journey, often while balancing family, education, and business, what advice would you offer?
I would say find a successful mentor. You don't have to have a female mentor or male mentor. It could be pretty much anyone that you have seen that has had success in their own life when it comes to business. I don't necessarily believe in all of these like get rich quick life coaching sessions. I think if you are going to get a life coach or business coach, make sure that they are qualified and have the resume and the experience and the proof in the pudding to actually be giving you support and mentorship. And they should never be giving you advice. They should be helping you forge your own path. But I think getting a successful mentor is going to be really key and important because you don't know what you don't know. And somebody who's been through it before can create a lot of shortcuts for you. I think finding your passion, there's going to be a lot of hours. I think people joke that, you know, you quit your day job so that you can work your own hours, but really as an entrepreneur, you're just working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you got to love what you do. If you don't love it, or if you're trying to do something for the purpose of money over passion, I think you're going to have a hard time with the sacrifice and the dedication it takes to really start and grow a business. And you have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. And I think you need to forget about balance and focus on harmony. You're never going to be able to balance it all. So what you got to do is pick what you're focusing on today. See where you can combine certain things that they can be in harmony together. Maybe get your teenagers to help you with your social media, get the whole family involved. See if there's things that you could spend time and work together with your family so you don't have to sacrifice one over the other. But I think sometimes you will have to just pick a hat and wear it for that day, for that afternoon, and everything else has to take a back seat to that. So there are times where I have to be president and CEO, and my family has to take a backseat to that. And there are times where I will 100% show up for my daughter or for my spouse in a way where my work has to take a backseat for that. So sometimes you can't juggle everything. You have to pick and choose, and you have to be very creative with your schedule in regards to kind of how to fit everything in, and you have to prioritize. One of the things that I do is I make a daily, weekly, monthly list of all my to do things, and then I will always circle the top three things that only I can do. The rest of it, I do my best to delegate, because if I don't do those three things, nobody else will, right? Where some of the other stuff can be done by other individuals. So there's different tricks to it for sure, but a mentor or a coach, somebody like that, could help you with some of that.
I would also love to touch on the McCamey College Education Foundation. You have established significant fund to support newcomers. Why is newcomer education so critical to Canada's future?
I think initially it started as a personal plight. After seeing my parents suffer, I really saw value in trying to find a way to help them. And I've always been of the mindset too, who much is given, much is expected. That's something my father kind of instilled in that. And so I always wanted to find a pathway that would be easier for people who were following in my parents' footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really purposeful for me. But I think in general, Canada benefits. Canada is made up of immigrants and newcomers, and
Mm-hmm.
various generations of them. But I think it's the backbone to our society, to our culture. We're a very unique country because we're a melting pot of all these cultures, ideas, beliefs. And I think education is important in any country. I
Mm-hmm.
think educating your girls, your women, your entrepreneurs, your immigrants, your newcomers, your domestic individuals just means that the country benefits. If people are educated, they can get better jobs, they can pay
Mm-hmm.
more taxes, they can benefit their family, they can financially help. And all of these things benefits the individual personally, their immediate family, their community, and our country as a whole. I mean, not having an educated population is, I think, what harms certain countries around the world. And I think this is so important. And so for me, immigrants and newcomers, obviously being one, I have a
Mm-hmm.
soft spot in my heart,
Mm-hmm.
which is why the foundation was established. But I think over the last 25 years of doing this, I've really come to understand how important it is and how crucial it is. And by educating individuals, we actually have created a huge entrepreneurial journey for a lot of them. And those people then go on to create jobs for other
Mm-hmm.
individuals. And I think this is just such a crucial part of growing our economy and supporting people. And I think immigrants bring a unique diversity to our landscape with food and culture and music and businesses that are so creative and unique. And all of this adds value to us as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the countries in the world, I'm just most grateful that we live in Canada, because I think we have a different and unique perspective on this compared to, let's say, the States or other groups. But I love how much of a melting pot we are, and that's meaningful to me. And I think we have to support each other, whether it's domestic or immigrants and newcomers. I think we all have to work together to create a better society for our Albertans, for Canadians, for our people.
Partnerships seem to be a cornerstone of your work. How do collaborations with community organizations and local institutions strengthen the impact of your initiatives?
I keep kind of, I guess, trying to tell people that it's so important to create bridges and partnerships with community efforts, whether it's MaKami out in the community, whether it's other organizations and charities connecting with us or other groups, because when we build together, everything is multiplied, right? And I think that in this environment, especially the current environment with everything that's going on in the world, finding ways to create opportunities where people are aligned, where they're creating and building things, where there's joy and opportunities that are coming out of that is so important. And so for us, we've always seen collaborations and partnership as a key thing for our students, whether it's to find employment. So we've seen opportunities for recruitment of students from different groups in Canada that need help, and individuals that are looking for support. It's all about connection. We're all connected. And so, how do you make the most of that to benefit people, to benefit our society, to benefit our students? I think more organizations need to look outwards to see what they can connect and do to help support their clientele, to support our society and their employees, because it's the best way, I think, to move forward.
Looking ahead, what innovations do you believe will shape the next decade of higher education in Canada?
I think one of the things that everyone is really concerned with is AI. Artificial intelligence is taking over the landscape in every industry. Education is not immune to that. I think there's a lot of things that have been changing technology wise for decades,
Mm-hmm.
right? But education has really been lacking. You know, we have the same chalkboards and presentation style that we did 50 or 75 years ago in a lot of institutions. And so education has had this little bit of a backseat to some of the technology revolution, but then COVID really shifted
Mm-hmm.
that when people had to go online and do school from home. I think it shook the education post-secondary kind of landscape to understand that things are changing. And then there's been stuff that's been residual from that that has been multiplied by artificial intelligence. And I think as presidents, we're all keeping an eye on that. We're
Mm-hmm.
all measuring how that might impact. I think the biggest impact is going to be based on the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, which jobs will be replaced by artificial intelligence? Are we training people today for the right positions of opportunity for the future? Not just 5 or 10 years down the road. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about 1 or 2 years down the road because it's so significant. If you look at something like trades or massage therapy, I think those are very safe and secure. Nobody likes being massaged by a robot. That's why we all don't have these massage chairs at home. It's not as comfortable. It's not as personable as a human touch. It'll never be replaced by robotics or machine, in my opinion. But there's other jobs that I think in industries that are going to be so dramatically disrupted that there's post-secondaries currently teaching for graduates in positions that will be obsolete soon. And so that concerns, I think, all levels of post-secondary. And we're all starting to see a shift in our thinking in regards to that. And so I think that's probably the number one concern that people need to address. And if you're somebody who's looking of going into education, you're wondering what to do, I think really thinking about that, like what jobs are something that will not be replaced by artificial intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
you should be researching and looking into and thinking about, because anything that's hands-on is going to be not something that's going to be the first wave of that. And I think that's important to consider because we are seeing so much dramatic change coming from artificial intelligence currently, and it's only going to increase in the future.
Absolutely. Finally, if you could redesign Canadian higher education from the ground up, what would you change to better support adult learners, newcomers, and entrepreneurs?
I would change everything. I've kind of gotten a bit of a reputation for being a disruptor in the post secondary environment, and I take that reputation with pride. I think it's so important to have entrepreneurial training from K to 12. I think when I was in K to 12, I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant, and I didn't know I could be one. I mean, there was this idea of you could be your own boss, but it wasn't quite explained to me, and
Mm-hmm.
there was no clear pathway on how to do that. There's a great organization called Junior Achievement for people who have kids in junior high and high school. They're a fantastic society that kind of helps children discover entrepreneurial opportunities and how to go from A to Z in regards to that. And I think there needs to be more of that in the traditional educational landscape from kindergarten to grade 12. I think critical thinking is so important. I think the nature of putting 50 students in a classroom, lining them up in rows, getting them to ask permission to go to the bathroom to eat lunch is training people for compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think critical thinking is lacking in that. And so I would like to see more flexibility, more adaptive learning models, early intervention for students who are struggling. There's a story I once read where it says, you know, like a bird would drown in water and a fish can't fly, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have the right person in the wrong environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think K to 12 education continues to do that, where you have a really smart, brilliant kid that just doesn't fit the mold, that doesn't fit in the box, and they are made to feel stupid or inadequate or less than. And that really solidifies their experience with education going into post secondary. Those are some of the most difficult learners we have, is the ones that don't believe in themselves because a teacher told them that they were stupid or told them they weren't good enough, or they had struggles with reading or dyslexia early on and there wasn't early intervention and help and support. So they have this history of failure in education instead of success. And so what I would like to see is bridging and wins, even small ones, as they go through their progression of traditional education into post secondary. And then what I'd really love to see is this commitment from both K to 12 as well as post secondary to have alignment in how people grow into their purpose and their passion, to have more awareness around how kids figure out what they should do with the rest of their lives. There's a lot of great supports in some school around counseling and helping with career planning, and in others there's none. And so there's a little bit of inconsistency there. So I would love to see a lot more wraparound services similar to MaKami College, but in a K to 12 environment. I would love to see them rethink how we do classes and formats. I'd love to see a lot more blended and online opportunities. Not every kid is designed to sit for 8 hours in a classroom. And I think that there's a lot that's left there to be desired. And I think there's been a lot of revolutions in a lot of different things, especially technology. I think we haven't seen an educational revolution in 75 years. I think COVID was the closest we came to it. I would love to see it really become something better than what it is currently today. And I don't want to knock what it is today. I think we have one of the best public education systems anywhere in the world. We have free education, obviously K to 12 for our students. We have lots of choice, especially in cities like Calgary and Edmonton. And so I don't want to crap on what we have. I think we have a great thing, but I think there's always room for improvement. And I think that technology has far outpaced what we've applied to education, whether it's elementary, junior high, high school, or post-secondary. And I think there's a lot to be desired that could be improved upon from there.
Wonderful. Maria, this has been such an inspiring conversation. Your journey shows how innovation and empowerment can truly transform education, not only for individual students, but for entire communities. Thank you for sharing your insights and your vision with us.
Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the episode of Changing Voices in Higher Education. Until next time, I'm Shamima. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning because the future of education is now.